All right, Jabosai. Good evening. Let's begin. I'll go to Vach. I'll get into Zimmer. Hopefully, everybody had a meaningful and uplifting fast. And let's begin. We're picking up today's daf is daf Kuf. Thank you to Yehuda for giving yesterday's daf. So we're going to begin last three words on Sadik Tes Amud Beis on to Kuf Amud Aleph. So Amar Rav Mari Amar. So just again to remind ourselves, to reorient ourselves a little bit, we're focusing over here. We had two contradictory statements by Rabbi Shimon. One statement was that an onain can bring a carbon pesach, and one statement was that an onain cannot bring a carbon pesach. Those are the two contradictory statements, and we're trying to reconcile those particular statements. So we're going to see the Gemara is going to advance. The Gemara suggests that it's 5 answers. It's really going to be 4 answers, as we'll see. But let's begin. Rav Mari says as follows: Lo kasha. There's no contradiction in Rabbi Shimon's statements. Top of Kuf Amud Aleph 100a. Kan shemeis lo meis biyod daled v'kavro biyod daled. Kam shemeis lo meis biyod gimel v'kavro biyod daled. We'll say two different cases. Rabbi Shimon is referring to two different cases. One case is where the person lost a relative on the 14th of Nisan. So the death took place on Erev Pesach and burial took place on Erev Pesach. And the other case is where the person died on Yud Gimel, the day before Erev Pesach, but burial was on Erev Pesach. What's the distinction between the two cases? Meis lo meis biyod daled v'kavro biyod daled. So if the person died on Yud Daled and the kavura took place in Yud Daled, then Yom Misa Tofes Leila Midaraisa. Then I will say, remember again, we began to see this concept yesterday. Then we would say that Yom Misa, if the day of death, also the aninos of the day of death also extends into the following night, Midaraisa. So if we'll call him Ruvain, lost a relative on the 14th of Nisan, that's the Yom HaMisa. And again, Kvura was also done on that same day, so the aninos will extend into the night, and therefore no Korban Pesach. On the flip side, Meis lo meis biyod gimel v'kavro biyod daled. If, however, again his loved one died on coffee, sushi. I don't know. I don't do the menu. I just give the shear. You can see Ari for all. The
sushi is actually.
It's in the truck. Okay, good. I think we have something left over from the Kiddush on Shabbos. I'm sure we could defrost that, some sheet cake or something. So the Gemara says as follows: Meis lo meis biyod gimel, the kavro biyod daled. If, however, again the person died on Yud Gimel and the kavura took place on Yud Daled, then Yom Kivura midrabanan eno tofes leilo ela midrabanan. So you both say Ikra Aninos is on the Yom HaMisa, not on the Yom HaKvura. So when you have Aninos, so the Yom HaMisa, so we say Midda Oraisa Aninos is on that day and on the following night. So if the person died and was buried on Yud Daled, then Allah L'maisa, in that situation, the individual will not bring the Korban Pesach because he is an Onein D'Oraisa. Versus if the relative died on the 13th, which means the D'Oraisa Aninos is on the 13th, Yom HaKvura, there's Aninos on the 14th, but it's only Midrabanan, and therefore, by definition, by extension, the nighttime is also only Midrabanan. And in that case, we are dealing with Aninos Dirabanan versus Echiyev Karban Pesach Midaraisa. Obviously, the Daraisa Pesach will trump the Dirabanan of Aninos. Amr Rav Ashi Rav Mari. Excuse me, so Rav Ashi said to Rav Mari as follows. Excuse me. Amr Rav Ashi Rav Mari. The Eloha Diktani. Amr Rav Shimon. But one second, what about the fact that we have the following statement from Rav Shimon? Teida, Shahari Amru Onein Tobel Va'ochel Es Pischo. But yet Rav Shimon said that the Onein has the ability to go to the mikvah, he does Tvila, and then he's able to eat his Pesach that night. Avalo Bikachim. But this doesn't apply with other Kabbanos. Namely, Kamina Lecha Ana Yom Misa Daraisa Va'amrit Li At Yom Kavura Dirabanan. So again, why can't the Gemara, why can't Rabbi Shimon simply respond? You're bringing me a kasha ultimately again from Yom Misa, which is Daraisa, and I'm responding to you with Yom Kavura, which is Dirabanan, and therefore the Gemara says kasha. So we'll say at the end of the day, Rav Muri's resolution of the contradictory statements of Rav Shimon ultimately does not work. On to the next one. Abayamar. So we'll say again, remember, just keep your eye on the ball over here. What are we trying to accomplish? It's very simple. Rav Shimon made two contradictory statements. One time Rav Shimon says an onain does bring a Korban Pesach. One time Rav Shimon said an onain does not bring Korban Pesach. The fundamental shaila we're trying to figure out, remember, is also what's the particular context of aninos. Which aninos are we talking about? So we have to keep track of multiple concepts unfolding at the same time. We've also now been introduced to aninos d'Rabbanan and aninos d'Oraisa. Right? Remember again. So now with the way the Gemara is holding at this moment is that Aninos Da'oraisa, ultimately again, that was fast. Mamish. So Aninos Da'oraisa, ultimately again, I will say, is only on the Yom HaMisa itself, versus Aninos D'Rabbanan, which is the Yom HaKvura. So we're going to see those concepts are going to be contested as well. So Abai Yom Rabbi will say tries to advance a resolution. What does he say? Lo kashya, kan shemes kodem chatzos, kan shemes la'achar chatzos. Very interesting. One statement of Rav Shimon is referring to where the death occurred before chatzos. One is after chatzos. And both say this piece is actually going to be exceptionally important when we get to the Rambam in the halacha l'maisa of this. What's the distinction? Kodem chatzos delo ichzi lePesach chayli aleaninos. This is fascinating, riveting. Right? So we'll say, so listen to this. If the loved one died before chatzos, then I will say, what's the issue? That means aninos was chal before the obligation to bring Karban Pesach. Remember again, the obligation to bring Karban Pesach begins when? Chatzos, midday. So if we'll call him Ruvain, if Ruvain loses his close relative before Chatzos, that means he becomes an onain before there's ever an obligation to go to bring the Karban Pesach. Well, in that case, then the aninos will set aside the obligation to bring the Pesach. Kodem chatzos delo ichsi lePesach chayli aninos. Before chatzos, if the person dies, if the relative dies, so aninos has the ability to devolve upon the individual, thereby setting aside his obligation to bring Pesach. Achar chatzos de ichsi lePesach lo chayli aninos. But this is actually quite interesting. After chatzos, when there is already an obligation to what? After chatzos, there is already an obligation of Karban Pesach. Once there's an obligation of Karban Pesach, it would appear that there cannot be a chalos shem aninos on the individual. Remember, I'm both say the backdrop to all of this is what? Not just simply that Karban Pesach is a chiyuv d'oraisa, but what else? That failure to bring Karban Pesach results in kares. So remember, that's what's driving this also. This is not just the mitzvah d'oraisa, this is mitzvah d'oraisa whose non-performance bears kares. So good. So the Gemara says, uminat seimra. The shanilei, excuse me. Bein kodem chatzos, bein la'achar chatzos. So where do you come up with this distinction? Before chatzos and after chatzos. If the relative dies before chatzos, is not yet the din of Karban Pesach. Therefore, the aninos is chal on the individual. But if he dies after chatzos, then there's already a chiyuv Karban Pesach, and therefore aninos is not chal on the individual. Where do you get that distinction? Disanya. Here we go, Abba. Now this brayso is going to take us on a little bit of a journey, and we're going to see multiple interpretations of this one brayso. Disanya. Lo yitama. So we'll say the pasuk says, "Ula'ach osaha besula akrovai love asher lo haisa leish lo yitama." So the Torah over here talking about the obligation of a kohen to become tamei for his relatives, and in this particular pasuk we're talking about his unmarried sister. So if a kohen has an unmarried sister, he is we'll see obligated or permitted, but he becomes tamei for her. He's permitted to become tamei for her. So it says the Gemara, watch this. So the sanya lo yitama mitzvah. So we'll say ultimately again, it is a mitzvah. We'll say mitzvah means what? Mitzvah means an obligation. So lo ratza mitamin also bal karcho, to the point that what we'll say, if the kohen has a sister who passed away, and again he refuses to become tamei, what do? Mitamin also bal karcho. We force him to become tamei. So we will say now what that means, we're going to see on a simple level, is we paskin for him that he's doing the wrong thing, and in fact it is his obligation ultimately again to become tamei. So Gemara tells a story. So one time there was this guy, Yosef HaKohen, and his wife passed away on Erev Pesach, and he did not want to go to the Levaya. He didn't want, or I should say, he didn't want to become tamei for her. Rabbi will say, now understand what this means. This is not like a cruel and indifferent statement. This was Yosef HaKohen understanding there were other people to take care of the burial. So therefore, again, he did not feel that he needed to become tamei ultimately for her burial needs because there were other people to take care of this. He figured we could let my wife be buried with kavod, right? The family, whoever else is there, are going to be there to take care of it, and I'll be able to do the Karban Pesach. And what happens? It wasn't amazing enough. His fellow Kohanim ganged up on him, and they said, "No, Yosef HaKohen, you're absolutely wrong." And they were metamei him bal karcho. In other words, they forced him to go to the levaya and ultimately be metamei for his wife. So the Gemara says, "Raminhi raise a kasha ulach." So from this pasuk, from the la yitama, what the Gemara seems to be learning out is what? Is that halacha l'maisa? Not only does the Kohen have a license to become tamei for his relatives, but what? He has an obligation. It's a tzivoy. It's an obligation to become tamei. Okay. Or mini. Now the Gemara is the kasha. Ula'achoso. So the pasuk says, So we'll say this is a different pasuk. Ula avivu liimo ula achivu lachoso lo yitama bahem b'mosam ki nezer elokav al rosho. So we'll say, so again, so the pasuk over here says that he does not become tamei, ultimately again for his sister. So the Gemara says, lachaso matam lomar. Watch this. Hari shahalach lishchat es pischo v'lamol espino. If a person was going to shech this korban pesach, or he was going to give a son a bris milah v'shama shemeis lomeis, and he hears that a relative passed away, yochel yitame. You might have thought that he should go back, cancel what he's doing, and become tamei for the relative. Amrit lo yitama. Therefore, the pasuk says no, he shouldn't become tamei. Yochel k'shem shlo yitma la'achos kach im etam lameis mitzvah. I might have thought that the same way that he does not become tamei for his sister, he also doesn't become tamei for a meis mitzvah. Tamud lomar ula achoso. Therefore, we'll say the pasuk says for his sister, la'achosohu de'ina matame aval matame hu lameis mitzvah. He doesn't become tamei for his sister, but he does become tamei for a meis mitzvah. So we'll say, what do you see? Lav shmamina kan kodim chatzos, kan la'achar chatzos. So we'll say it's also quite possible that there's another way to explain the discrepancy between the psukim. That one is talking about before chatzos, one is talking about after chatzos. When the death occurs before chatzos, and therefore what? When the death occurs before chatzos, and therefore there is not yet an obligation of korban pesach, that is when ultimately the aninos is chal, and there's an obligation to become tamei. Masha'in kain, if it's already past chatzos, there's already an obligation to bring korban pesach. Maybe in that circumstance, he does not become tamei. To which the Gemara says, I don't know where you get that from. Dilma li olam emulacha idi v'idi achar chatzos. It's quite possible that both cases are dealing with a situation where what? The death occurred after chatzos. Now we'll say, now remember, so what does it mean if death occurred after chatzos? V'ha Rabbi Shmuel, v'ha Rabbi Akiva. And in fact, again, the braysos just simply reflect two different opinions. This sanya, here we go. Lo yitama. When the pasuk says that he shall become tamei for his sister, lo yitama. So I'm sorry, this sanya lo yitama. So we'll say actually, this pasuk is talking about over here. The Gemara is quoting over here, right? So lo yitama, excuse me, same pasuk as we spoke about before. Lo yitama rishus divrei Rabbi Shmuel. We'll say Rabbi Shmuel in the sense that lo yitama in fact is not an obligation, but rather it's a rishus. The Kohen has a license. The truth is also dealing with a Nazir. But really with the Kohen over here, Kohen has a license ultimately again to become tamei for his sister, but not an obligation. Rabbi Akiva Omer Chova. Rabbi Akiva says no, it's an obligation. To which the Gemara says, Lo saglaitcha dereisha dahi Rabbi Akiva katanila. But the Gemara says, here's the problem. The problem is we already have Rabbi Akiva on record as being the author of the Reisha. This sanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Nefesh elu hakrovim. Meis elu harachokim. So we'll say the pasuk over here that the Gemara is focusing on is Kol Yemei Heziro LaHashem Al Nefesh Meis Lo Yavo. So Rabbi Akiva darshans the pasuk as follows: Nefesh, that refers ultimately again to krovim, to relatives. Meis, deceased, elu harachokim, non-relatives. Lo aviv, so ultimately again when it says for his father, eino mitame. Aval mitame hu lemeis mitzvah. He doesn't become tamei for his father, but he will become tamei for a meis mitzvah. Li'imo, what do we learn? I suppose we're just dissecting the pasuk according to Rabbi Akiva. Li'imo, what do we learn from the phrase li'imo for his mother? So it teaches us the following: Haya kohen v'hu nazir. So we'll say if he's both a kohen and a nazir, li'imo hu de'ena matame. He will not become tamei for his mother. Aval matame hu lemeis mitzvah, but he will become tamei ultimately for a meis mitzvah. Lo achiv. What does it mean when it says for his brothers? Shim haya kohen gadol, or his brother. Shim haya kohen gadol v'hu nazir. If he's both a kohen gadol and a nazir. He will not become tamei for his brother, aval metame hu lemeis mitzvah, but he will become tamei for a meis mitzvah. Also remember again, this individual in question over here is both a kohen gadol as well as a nazir. Ula achoso, and his sister. Ma tamud lo. What is the pasuk coming to teach me? Harish shahalach lishchot es pischo v'lamol espino. If he's going to shecht his pesach to circumcise his son, v'shama shemeis lameis, and he hears that he has a relative who passed away. Yachol yitama, you might think he would become tamei. So amrit lo yitama. Ultimately, therefore, the pasuk says such an individual, the kohen gadol nazir, does not become tamei. Yachol kashem shein metami la'achoso kachin metami lemeis mitzvah. So you might have thought the same way that he doesn't become tamei for his sister, so too he doesn't become tamei for a meis mitzvah. Talmud lomar ula achoso la'achoso lo yitama aval yitame hu lemeis mitzvah. Therefore, I will say the pasuk says again, the exclusion is only for relatives, but at the end of the day, there's never an exclusion ultimately again for a meis mitzvah. So remember, in all cases, and this we already know, but in all cases, whether he's a Kohen Gadol, whether he's a Kohen Hedyot, whether he's a Nazir, whether he's a Kohen Gadol Nazir, although again, remember, the higher up you go on the chain, the more exclusions you have for the ability to become tamei for relatives. But one thing is clear, which is everyone has the license, and in fact the obligation, not really license is the wrong word, the obligation to become tamei for a meis mitzvah. Amud Beis. Rava Amar. So we'll say, so now again, remember, we're going back. So we're trying to figure out something very simple, but yet it's becoming exceptionally complicated. We're just trying to figure out, how do I reconcile the two different opinions or two different statements of Rabbi Shimon? One statement says that an onen can bring Karban Pesach. One opinion says an onen can't be Karban Pesach. So we'll say now we're on our third option over here. Rava Amar. Rava says, Idi v'idi achar chatzos. Both of Rabbi Shimon's statements are talking about what? Where the relative died after chatzos. Okay. V'lo kasha. So we'll say, if that's the case, how is there not a contradiction between the statements? So listen to this. Kan kodem sheshachtu v'zarko alav. So we'll say, the Brisa says, the Brisa which says that he does not bring the Karban Pesach is talking about a case where they have not yet shechted and done zrika on his behalf. Kan la'achar sheshachtu v'zarko alav. And the second case I will say, where we say an onen does bring a Karban Pesach, is where what? They already shechted and did zrika on his behalf. So look at Rashi for just a moment. Idi v'idi la'achar chatzos, va'afilu meis la'achar chatzos. So listen to this. Now this is different than the previous model, because in the previous model, if the death occurred after chatzos, then what? Then he would bring Karban Pesach. Why? Because once the obligation for Pesach sets in, it doesn't allow aninos to devolve upon the individual. Rava argues on that, and Rava says no. Both cases are where the individual, the relative, died after chatzos. So wherein lies the distinction? So now look at that Rashi. Idi v'idi la'achar chatzos, va'afilu meis la'achar chatzos, kodem sheshachtu alav, islei l'Rabbi Shimon lo yavi es pisko, tirachmona dachye, kedidarish v'azos. Well, so listen to this. So the distinction is as follows. Both cases are where the relative died after chatzos. So wherein lies the distinction? So the shaila will say is like this. He's part of a chabura. The assumption is, did they already shecht and do the zrik on his behalf? If that's the case, then what? Then he is permitted to go ahead and have the Karban Pesach that night. Masha'in kain, if zrika, if shchita and zrika have not yet occurred, then halacha l'maisa, he is not permitted to go ahead and partake of the Karban Pesach that evening. So the Gemara. So again, kan kodem sheshachtu v'zarko alav, kan la'achar sheshachtu v'zarko alav. Amrli Ravad bar Masna l'Rava, achar sheshachtu v'zarko as damo ma'ida hava hava. And remember again, this is fascinating, and we already know this. If there is one takeaway from all of Meseches Zevachim, one takeaway, it is that when is a Karban effective? After Zrika. After Zrika. So we'll say, now here's what's interesting. That the Gemara suggests as follows. I don't understand. If they already did Zrika, so remember, the whole issue, the contradiction of Rabbi Shimon, is in whether or not an onen is permitted to consume the Karban Pesach that night, the night of Pesach. But says the Gemara, says Ravad bar Masna to Rava, I don't understand. If they already did the Zrika, or the Shchita and the Zrika, then what? On a technical level, we're done. In other words, both say, let's say somebody's. I'll give you here is the test case. Let's say Reuven is part of a chabura. Baruch Hashem, no one's dying. Thank God, everybody's healthy, everybody's wonderful. He's part of a chabura. They shecht on his behalf. They do zrika on his behalf, and that night, mamish, he's sick in bed. Can't eat a piece of Karban Pesach. Does he have an obligation to bring Karban Pesach and Pesach Sheni? It's a 50-50. Right? No, there's no obligation of Karban Pesach Sheni. 50-50, you just chose the wrong 50. It's good, it's all right. So again, there is no obligation of Pesach Sheni. Why? Even though, again, I want to point out, there is definitely an obligation to eat Karban Pesach. But if for some reason you were part of the Chabura, but then unable to eat the Pesach on Pesach night at the Leil HaSeder, so you have still discharged your obligation. Again, I want to be clear. You don't have the right to decide, you know what, I'm not eating Karban Pesach. Yeah, if you can, you have an obligation. But if for some reason there's extenuating circumstances and you can't eat it, as long as you're a part of a Chabura at the time of Shchita and Zrika, you're good. So ask Shav'at bar Masna Tarava, I don't understand. If you're telling me that we're talking about a case over here where this guy he was already part of a Chabura that did Shchita and Zrika, so why are we getting into a discussion if he can eat at night or not? To a certain degree, that discussion is almost immaterial. Because what we're really trying to focus on over here is what's the Yotze the mitzvah. If you're telling me that once they did Shechita and Zrika for him, he's part of the Chabura, then I don't care even if you say he can't eat at night. It doesn't make a difference to me. He fulfilled the mitzvah. Oh, watch this. To which the Gemara says, Amar li Ravina, Achilas Psachim Ma'akva Midra Barafuna. So we'll say, Gemaras like this are so exciting because Mamish is like a roller coaster, right? You never know where you're going to end up. Every single time we think we get to a resolution, another twist. The Gemara says, you're right, but there's an issue. The issue is Rabba Barafuna. Rabba Barafuna says that Achilas Psachim Ma'akva. You see, I made it sound like no one disagrees with the statement we just made before, but it's not true. Rabbi Barafuna disagrees. He says it's not just enough to be part of a chabura for shchita and zrika. For shchita and zrika, yeah, excellent. You meant to say Rabbi Barafuna shita, right? Good. So Rabbi Barafuna says not just enough to be part of a chabura for shchita and zrika, but rather again you have to eat the korban pesach, and if you don't eat it, you do not fulfill your obligation. To the point that Rabbi Barafuna says, if you don't eat korban pesach, then what? Then what? Then what? Pesach Sheni. Says the Gemara, Amarle, Tzayis Mai Deka Amar Lecha Rabcha. So he responds to him and says, you should listen to what your Rebbe is telling you. Meaning, in other words, what he just told you is correct. My Rabbi Barafuna. So we'll say, where do we see this limud of Rabbi Barafuna? This Sanya, here we go. So we'll say this is actually quite interesting because the Gemara is going to go into a little bit over here, the halachos of Avelos. So we're going to pick up a couple of very interesting Avelos dinim as well. So the Gemara says like this: Disanyo, Yom Shmua, Ki Yom Kivura Lemitzas Shivo Shosha. So this statement is actually halacha lemaisa. Yom Shmua. But if you look at Rashi, it's Rashi almost right across from Hagol Sabach. Rashi says Yom Shmua Sheshama Shemeislo Ubeshmua Krova Shetoch Lamidas Ken. Remember from our Moed Cotton days? Remember Moed Cotton, like yesterday. So remember again, there's something in halacha called the Shmua Krova and the Shmua Rechoka. Shmua Krova means you hear about the death of a close relative within 30 days. That's Krova. Rechoka means after 30 days. So we'll say, so watch this. So what's the difference between them? Yom Shmua, if you heard about the death of a loved one, and it's within 30 days of the passing of the loved one, then what? Ki Yom Kivura, Lemitzas Shivo Shosh. So it's actually a very important halacha. If you hear about the death of a close relative within 30 days, even though what? You missed the Levaya, you missed the rest of the family sitting Shiva. If you heard within 30 days, what's the halacha? You sit Shiva and Shosha. We'll say, by the way, you know where this comes up? Just contemporarily. This comes up sometimes in situations where, let's say someone is very old and they lost a relative and you don't want to tell them about the loss now. Some point you're going to have to tell them. So the halacha actually creates the allowance to intentionally delay informing a person about the loss of a loved one in order that what? In order to avoid Shiva and Shosh, with people who are elderly and suffer loss. So we would tell them, day 31. After day 31, ultimately again, we're not going to go back to it now. There are certain Nihugi Avelos, more like momentary Nihugi Avelos that apply, but there's no Shiva, no Shloshim after 30 days. Fine. So we'll say, but that's not our focus here. Here's our focus. Ulachilas Psachim. Rabbi say, for the purpose of Achilas Psachim, in other words, if you hear about the death of a close relative, within 30 days after the death, and it happens to be, let's say, Erev Pesach, then what's the halacha? Ki Yom Likot Atzamos. Then Rabbi say, we give you the status, ultimately again, as the day in which you collected the bones of your relative. Rabbi say, now what's this? So just understand, in Mishnei Eretz Yisrael burial practices, Rabbi say, if there's one thing about Eretz Yisrael that has always been true, it's that real estate is at a premium. Real estate is always at a premium. You know, if you look, by the way, at what they're doing now at Har HaMenuchos with these multi-layered vaults, it's incredible. And it's not by choice. It's not by choice. Many cemeteries are start doing this now, where they're burying multiple people in the same grave. So what they do is, let me clarify that just for a moment. So what they do is they dig the grave especially deep. They'll put the first person who passed away in. They put like the cinder blocks, like they do in many of the in the cemeteries in Eretz Yisrael, and then they bury someone else on top of it. They usually sell it as family plots, so you can have sometimes 3 or 4 people buried in the same grave. The idea ultimately is it's an issue of real estate. So how do they deal with this in the time of the Mishnah? They had actually an incredible idea. But say, you could see this if you have the schus to go to the kever of Shimon HaTzadik, right, in East Yerushalayim. So right next to the grave of Shimon HaTzadik, there's a very interesting burial cave called the Cave of the Sanhedrin HaKatan. So what's the pshat? What do you mean, brave the Sanhedrin HaKatan? They discovered a burial cave. The burial cave had 23 sets of remains. The number of the Sanhedrin HaKadosh. They call it the care of the set. So we'll say, what they used to do in biblical Eretz Yisrael, Mishnei Eretz Yisrael, person would die, they would put their body in a cave, they would let the body decompose. After that, they would collect the bones, and they would bury the bones in a family plot. Obviously, burying bones takes up a lot less space than burying an entire body. That day, when you went back for the bones, was called the day of Likut Atzamos. On the day when you collected the bones of a close relative, there were certain nihugev, certain avelos practices. Essentially, you had to sit like 5 minutes of shiva. You had to observe morning practices for a very short amount of time on that day. Look at Rashi for just a moment. V'achilas p'sachim. So both say, therefore, if you hear about the death of a close relative, within 30 days, but let's say today we have to bring Karban Pesach. So, for Karban Pesach purposes, it is like the day of Likut Atzamos. In other words, that it's only the Avelis practices that devolve upon you, or only the Avelis practices as if one would have collected the bones of a loved one that day. Look at Rashi. Ulachilas P'sachim. Hainu Yom Shmua Ki Yom Likut Atzamos. The Kamlam P'sachim Parakala. Isha Shomea Lamesom Malakit Atzamos. Tova V'ochel B'kadshim La'erev. So we'll say, if you hear about the death of your loved one and you collect their bones, Shabbos say ultimately you go to the mikvah and you could eat karbanos that evening. She says, how can you say that? If you're collecting bones, Shabbos say, then what? Then what? Bones also convey tumas meis. If that's the case, you need paraduma. How are you going to the mikvah and eating kachim that night? To which Rashi says, no. What's the case of saying? The case is where someone else did it. Someone else did it. So ultimately, again, but even though someone else, the very interesting part is I, as the close relative, have the obligation to observe some morning practices on the day of Likot Atzamos. And what's the chiddush? Even if what? Even if I'm not the one actually doing the Likot. So we'll say, so amazingly enough, if a person hears about the death of a loved one within 30 days, so the Gabi carbon purposes, that day is like what? That day is like the day of Likot Atzamos. La'achilas p'sachim ki'om Likot Atzamos. And for both of these cases, you can go to the mikvah and you can eat kachim at night. Here's the problem. Hagufa kasha. Both say that statement is inherently contradictory. Why? Amrit yom Shmuel yom kavura lemitzvas shiva ushloshim. So you just said before that when you hear Shmuel Krova, you hear about the death of a close relative within 30 days. So when you hear about it, that day is like the actual day of kavura for the purpose of shiva and shloshim, i.e., you have to sit shiva and you have to observe shloshim. Ulachilas p'sachim kiyom likot atzamas. But you said for Karban Pesach purposes, it's like the day in which the bones of a close relative were collected. First, why Nabos say kufam days michlal diyom kvura. Nabos say that the inference from that is that on the actual day of burial, afilu le'erev nami lo'ochel. So we'll say the inference from that is that on the actual day of burial, then what? That night you would not be permitted to partake of sacrificial items. The problem is v'hadratani. Then the same brisa says, contradicts itself and says, echad zeh ve'echad zeh tova v'ochel b'kachim la'erev. The same brisa will say says that for everything, Karban Pesach, other kachim, all you need to do is what? Go to the mikvah and eat your karbanos that night. Amar Rav Chisda tonight. Rav Chisda says it's not a contradiction. It's just a difference of opinion. Machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Rav Huna Amar lo kasha. So Rabbi Rav Huna says ultimately again it's not a kasha. Kan sheshama shmua al meso samach l'shkia sachama. So he says like this. So therefore the Gemara suggests, Rav Chisda suggests, that in fact it's just a difference of opinion. There's just a machlokes tanoim. Ultimately again about what happens. What the status of karbanos is on the night after the kvura. So the Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Rav Huna Amar lo kasha. It's not a contradiction. Kan sheshama shmua al meso samach l'shkia sachama. One is talking about where he heard about the death of his close relative right before Shkia. V'chein sheliktu lo atzamos samach l'shkia sachama. Similarly, again, say where likot atzamos occurred right before Shkia. V'chein shemes lo mes ukavro samach l'shkia sachama. Or where literally he lost a relative and the kvura took place right before Shkia. V'kan la'achar shkia sachama. And the other case of Bosei is talking about a situation where the death, the burial, or the likot atzamos took place after Shkia sachama. So la'achar shkia sachama, but if it's after shkia, ma'ida hava hava. But understand if it's after shkia, then by definition, again we're already done with the process. Al shmamina Achilas psachim. So both say the assumption is if it's after Shkia, then what's already occurred? What's already occurred? Your Karban Pesach, right? Shchit and Zrika has already occurred. If that's the case, then you'll excuse me. I don't care if somebody sounds coarse, but it doesn't halachically. It doesn't impact me if somebody dies after Shkia because I've already fulfilled my obligation of Karban Pesach through the Shchita and the Zrika. To which I will say this was a long journey to get to this final point. Rather, what do you see? Shmamina achilas psachim ma'akva. Ultimately, and what do you see from here? That there's an opinion about that holds, right? It's Rabbi Bar Avchana, Rabbi Bar Afuna, and Menachem Schonfeld to both hold that what? That achilas psachim is ma'akev, right? That halacha lemaisa again. It's not enough just to offer it, but you also have to go ahead and consume it. And failure to consume the Karban Pesach ultimately again results in non-fulfillment of your biblical obligation. Rav Ashi Amar, what does it mean both in this case and that case? Now, when the Brisa says both in this case, meaning Karban Pesach and other Kodshim, you go to the mikveh and you can eat it at night. What does that refer to? Hachi Kamar, Echad Yom Shmua, Ve'echad Yom Likut, Tovel Va'ochel B'Kodshim. What it means, Rabbi say, is that both on the day of a Shmua Krova, as well as the day on Likut Atzamas, you can go to the mikveh and you can eat Kodshim that night. V'had Ravashi B'dusihi. But that statement of Rav Ashi, I will say, ultimately is a mistake. This statement of Rav Ashi is false. So the Gemara says, Michti alokoi, because I will say that statement is referring to the statement that came before it. Zeh v'zeh mi boile. And if it was true what Rav Ashi said, I will say, then the way the Brisa should have read is zeh v'zeh, meaning that both statements are included in the previous clause. So the Gemara says, Ela shmamina badusihi. Rather, you have to say that Rav Ashi's statement, in fact, is a mistake. Umay Tanoi, and I will say, what is the machlokes Tanoim? Here we go. The Sanya. Admasai misonein alav. So we'll say, here we go. So the Gemara says, at what point in time, how long does aninos extend for? And I will say, this is going to be actually a very important discussion. What is the duration of aninos? So we'll say again, remember, aninos means here's what we know. Aninos is the period between death and burial. That's what we know. What are the variables? The variables are, I will say, is does aninos extend to the next day? Let's say again, if death and burial occur on the same day, that's an easy case. Aninos begins at the moment of death and ends when? Ends when? So, but what the Gemara Masechtas Moekan calls the stimas hagolel. You know, when the grave is filled in the pile on top of the grave, aninos ends and avelos begins. That's our easy case. Where do the difficult cases come up? What happens if death, if Misa and Kavura are on 2 different days? So we'll say, so the Shaila then is, does Aninos extend up until the Kavura? Does Aninos only apply that day? Does Aninos apply that day and that night? But as soon as that night is over, so we'll say those are all the variables. So here we go. Ad Masai Misonin Alav. So we'll say this is very exciting. I mean, as exciting as Aninos gets, but this is exciting. Ad Masai Misonin Alav. So we'll say the Gemara says as follows. Kol Hayom. So we'll say first opinion says the entire day. The entire day of death. So one is in a state of aninos, meaning when we say the entire day, meaning until the point of Kvura. Obviously, if Kvura occurs on that day, then aninos is capped at the time of Kvura. But even if Kvura doesn't occur that day, aninos only extends that particular day. Rabbi Omer calls manshelo nikbar. Rabbi says, no, aninos applies or extends until Anabosai as long as the individual has not been buried. It's not been buried. But ma'askina, so what's the case? If you want to say that it's the actual, we're talking about the actual date of death. Mi'ika de lesle yom misa de tafis leila midirabana. So we'll say again, remember, even if you say, see, doesn't everybody agree that halacha l'maisa aninos extends the day of the death, and at least midirabanan aninos will extend into that night. V'su Rebbe Omer calls manshelo nikbar. So we'll say furthermore, Rebbe says that as long as the individual has not yet been buried, so aninos is still there. So the Gemara says hakavro ishtarile. Sounds like once there is burial, then by definition aninos is complete. Umiika de lesle va'acharisa kiyomar. So we'll say, but here's the problem. We have this pasuk of va'acharisa kiyom mar. The pasuk ultimately from Amos, and I will say what we learn from that va'acharisa kiyomar seems to tell us, where the Gemara is darshaning right now, I will say, is that even after burial, there's a havamina. That's what? That the state of aninos should extend for that day, which I both say is a fascinating day. Now remember, I want to tell you where this does come up in a fascinating idea. So we know that during aninos, the halacha is that an avel is not permitted to put on tefillin. There's a big machlokes harishonim about what happens on the Yom Rishon of Avelos after the Levi. In other words, let's say the Levi is in the morning. Avel goes back to the Shivam. Does he put on tefillin on that day or not? So there's a big machlokes harishon about what to do in that particular situation. You should know, Rov poskim hold that he does not. Rov poskim hold that an Avel does not put on tefillin Yom Rishon, even though Aninos already concluded. Again, it's a machlokes, but part of that is rooted in this particular dynamic of almost like a chalos shem aninos on the day of death. So if the day of death also happens to be the day of burial, then by definition again, so the Gemara says "Acharisa kiyomar" means the way the Gemara is teaching that pasuk is "Acharisa," even after the burial, kiyom mar. The bitterness of the day extends, i.e., there's still some vestige of the aninos that's there. So the Gemara says, Amrav Sheshes, so Ayom Kvura Kai. So ultimately, again, that's referring ultimately to the day of Kvura. So Maskef Rav Yosef, Elahadik Tani, Hashomea Al Meso, Kimalaki Hashomea Al Meso. If somebody hears a shmua about the death of his loved one, Kimalaki Samos, ultimately, again, he observes Avelos like one who collected the remains of his relative, and therefore, Tova Va'ocha B'Kachim La'erev. He goes to the mikvah and he eats karbanos that night. Michlal, the Yom Kavura, Afil Erev Nami La'achel. Both now what we can infer from that is what? Is that halacha l'maisa that on the day of the Kavura, you would not eat at all. In other words, on the day of the Kavura, even after the Kavura, ultimately one would not consume anything sacrificial. So Hamani, so we'll say, who does this refer, meaning, so whose opinion is this? Elataritz ad masai ma'onin in alav. So we'll say, rather, you have to read it as follows. Until when does Aninos extend? Kol osa hayom v'leilo. So we'll say, when does Aninos extend? The entire day of death, as well as what? The following night. Rabbi Omer calls manchelo nikbar. Rabbi says no. Ultimately, Aninos only applies when? As long as burial has not occurred. Aval nikbar below leilo. We'll say once burial occurs, then what? We're done. Right? We're done. Ultimately, that's it. The following night is not included. Amruk made Rabbi Yirmiyah. We're almost finished. Amruk made Rabbi Yirmiyah. So he says for Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar gaver Rabbi Yosef lemahachi. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said, could it be that a great man like Rabbi Yosef would say such a thing like this? Lema the Rebbe Lakula. Are you going to tell me then that Rebbe is makel over here by these halachas? Vatanya, but we learn ad masai mis onein alav. Until how long? For how long does aninos extend? Kolzman she'ino nikbar. To which the first opinion says, Rabbi say, as long as the individual has not been buried, aninos extends. Afilu mikan va'ad asara yomim divrei Rebbe. Ooh, we have a problem, right? Because we just said Rebbe was the makel one. Now here's the problem that Rebbe now is on record as saying that what? That the aninos extends as long as kavura has not happened, even if there's a 10-day wait for some reason between death and burial. The Chachamim say, Ein misonein alav ela osa hayom bilvad. And the Chachamim say, no, aninos only applies that day. Ela taritz hachi. Rather, here's how I have to interpret it. Ad masai hu misonein alav. How long does aninos extend for? Kol osa yom below leilo. So we'll say the first opinion will say that day, the day of death, but it does not include the night. Rabbi Omer kol zman shelo nikbar. Rabbi says it applies as long as the individual has not yet been buried. Ve'im nikbar, but if he's been buried, tofes leilo. Then Rabbi say, interestingly enough, the following night will be included as well. Midirabanon. Amrua kamei dirava, excuse me. So they said this before. They said this in front of the Rava. Midika Amar Rabbi yom kavura tofes leilo midirabanon. So if Rebbe's going to actually say, Rabbi say that the day of the Kfura, so that day, which apparently again is the day of Aninos, and also includes the following night Midirabanan, Mechlal di Yom Misa Tofes Leila Midoraisa. So Rabbi say, if the Yom Kfura which the beginning of that day was the day of Aninos, and I tell me again the following night is also in the state of Aninos Midirabanan, then Rabbi say I would infer from that what? That the Yom Misa also includes the following night in the state of Aninos Midoraisa. The Sava Rebbe Aninos Laila D'Oraisa? Does Rebbe actually hold that nighttime Aninos is D'Oraisa? That can't be, and I'll tell you why. V'hatanya. We learned Hein Hayom. Shabbos say this pasuk. Actually, this is going to be. I'm going to tell you coming attractions. Tomorrow is an incredible daf. There's some agarata in it. It's like one-stop shopping tomorrow. Anything and everything you want from the Torah Kedosha can be found on Zevachim Daf Kuf Aleph. We're going to see beautiful agarata, but it's really going to all be rooted in the story of the Yom Hashmini, of the inauguration day of the Beis Hamikdash, of the Mishkan, the death of Nadav and Avihu, the burning of the Seir Rosh Chodesh, the Chatos, and the exchange between Moshe and Aaron. So Mamish, it's good. I'm just going to say it like that. It's good. You don't want to miss it. So you don't want to miss it. So Rabbi says, listen to this. So the Gemara says, could Rebbe really hold that Aninos Lailas Doraisa? Could he really hold that? After all, the pasuk says, Hein Hayom Ani. So what's this? Quoting over here by Daber Aaron and Moshe. Hein Hayom Ikrivu. Right? Hein Hayom Ikrivu es Chatasam, Ves Alasam, Lefnei Hashem, Vatzikrena Osi Ka'ila, V'achalti Chatas Hayom Ha'tir V'anei. So I'm not going to go into this, what this means right now, because we're going to focus on this more tomorrow. But the point the pasuk is, Hein Hayom. Ani Hayom Asar V'layla Mutter. What Aaron was telling Moshe, and again we'll further develop this tomorrow, is that Aaron was saying, when my sons died, I was in Aninos. But that status of Aninos only applied when? Hein Hayom. Today. Not tonight. Which I will say shows you what? Uladoros Bein Bayom, Bein Balayla, Asar, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that was unique by Aaron. By Aaron, Aninos was only by day, not at night. Ladore Doros are future generations. Aninos will apply ultimately again by day and by night. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Omer, Aninos Laila Eina Medivrei Torah Ela Medivrei Sofrim. But Rabbi says that what? It's not true. Rabbi says that halacha l'maisa, there is Aninos Laila. There's Aninos Yom. That's Doraisa. The day of death, Rabbi say, that day, the Aninos of that day is Doraisa. There is Aninos Laila. But what? What's the nature of that Aninos? Dirabanan. So we'll say the contradiction. Because Rabbi just said before that Aninos Laila, or the Gemara for Rabbi Shita, Aninos Laila is Doraisa. Rabbi is exclusively on record as saying what? Aninos Laila is Dirabanan. So which one is it? To which the Gemara says, so El Medivrei Sofrim, so which Gemara says, the Olam Dirabanan. You're right. In reality, Aninos Laila Rabosai is Midrabanan, top of Kufalaf, and with this we'll stop. Actually, we're not going to stop yet. The Chachamim asu chizuk l'divrayim yosem mishal Torah. And I will say, even though Aninos Laila is quote unquote only Dirabanan, nevertheless we see this concept in other situations as well, that when Chazal legislate the halacha, ultimately again sometimes they make it even stronger than a Doraisa. So that when Rebbe said before that Aninos Laila is Doraisa, it wasn't a false statement. In other words, in its pure halachic construct, it is a dirabanan, not a daraisa. But in terms of the intensity of the halacha and the severity of the halacha, it has the teeth of a daraisa. That's why Rebbe on one hand says it's a dirabanan because that is true to its pure halachic construct. But he could also say it's a daraisa in terms of its intensity and severity. We'll just end off. So the shayla, remember again, I know I want you to be able to sleep tonight. You're not going to be able to sleep unless you know what. What do we do about Karban Pesach? So again, remember we got sidetracked. And by the way, we're like Karban Pesach just kind of got left in the dust over here. So we're going to focus now on tomorrow's daf is all about Aaron and his sons, a beautiful and incredible Gemara. What about Karban Pesach? This, by the way, must have been a shai that came up each and every year when the Beis Hamikdash stood up. So you realize what a schus is. On Masei Tisha B'Av, we're going to learn a sugya that's related to Karban Pesach and Mesech Zevachim, all about Karbanos. We get to come into the Beis Hamikdash on Masei Tisha B'Av. So we'll say. So the shai is what happens if a person suffers the loss of a close relative on Erev Pesach? Can he bring Karban Pesach or not? So listen to this. So this is the halacha l'maisa with this one. So this is the Rambam Hilchos Karban Pesach Perek Vav Halacha Tes. Here we go. Ha'onein ra'oi lechol Pesach le'erev. An onein is permitted to eat a Pesach at night. So we'll say. So understand what that means just in its purest form. An onein means what? What's occurred? Someone died. What hasn't occurred? Burial. So that means again, someone's relative died on Erev Pesach, burial couldn't occur. Remember again, that means he's not getting buried on the first day of Yom Tiv, right? Remember Eretz Yisrael, so they'll bury second day Yom Tiv, right? They'll bury second. The truth is, even the pure halacha is you could bury anyone second day Yom Tiv anyway, even in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, so he's an onein. So the Gemara Paskins he hit Karban Pesach. Now watch this. Why? Mipnei sha'an. Here we go. Mipnei sha'aninos laila midivreihem. Because about say again, we paskin like Rebbe. There is Aninos Laila, meaning Aninos continues into the following night, but it's only Midrabanan. And lo midu divrei b'makom kares b'davar el shochtin alav v'tolo v'achakach ochel kadesh yifrosh me'aninos v'le'as yachtad. So let's listen to this. Everything's coalescing so beautifully. We paskin that there is Aninos Balayla. In other words, your Aninos status follows you not just on the day of death, but into the following night. But that status of Aninos is what? Is Dirabanan. And the rabbis decided to lift their Aninos where? By Karban Pesach. Why? Because Karban Pesach is not just a simple mitzvah saseh, but is a mitzvah saseh whose non-performance carries with it kares. Therefore, what do? You go to the mikvah. Now, this is all assuming that what? Right? This is all assuming that he hasn't come in contact with the corpse. Obviously, he's come in contact with the corpse. Pesach Sheni. Assuming he has to come in contact with the corpse, he goes to the mikvah. Apparently he's going to the mikvah ultimately again interested for his aninus, and he could eat Korban Pesach that night. Fine. Now watch this. When is this true? Here we go, Basai. Gotta hold cup on this a little bit. When is this true? Shemeis lo hameis achar chatzos. We accept the distinction of the Gemara. This is only true if the person died after chatzos. Why? Shekvar nischayev b'karban Pesach. Because Rabbi saying, if the relative died after chatzos, the individual, the onain, was already chayav in Karban Pesach. Once he already had the chiyuv d'ais of Karban Pesach, so aninos could set into a certain degree. He does become an onain. So, for example, he will be pater from other positive mitzvos. He will have to go to the mikvah. So there's a somewhat of a din of onain on him, but it doesn't get to fully devolve upon the individual. Avale meis lo hameis kodem chatzos. But I will say, if the person lost his relative before chatzos, then what? Ain't shochten alav. We do not shecht for him. Ella yitchel hasheni. So we'll say we accept this distinction. If the loss occurred after chatzos, the obligation of Korban Pesach already came about, and therefore again he goes ahead and he eats the Korban Pesach that night. If the loss occurred before chatzos, then what? Then there was no opportunity ever for the obligation of Korban Pesach to devolve upon him. Goes to Pesach Sheni. But what's about say one last piece? Vim shachat alav v'zarko adam tovel va'ochel le'erev. Rabbi say, listen to this. But see, listen to the following case. Let's say this guy was already part of a chabura. The chabura didn't hear that his father passed away. So what did they do? They shechted and did zrika on his behalf, thinking that he was still part of the chabura. So we'll say if that's the case, that his chabura went ahead without him and they shechted Korban Pesach, he is permitted to partake of the Korban Pesach that night, even though what? The death occurred before chatzos. One last case, then I'm going to let you go. Meis lo meis b'shlosha asar, the kavru ba'avar asar. We'll say, see now this is the other case in the Gemara. What happens if the death occurs on the 13th of Nisan, but kvura occurred on Erev Pesach? So what's the halachas? We'll say that's an easy one. Harehu biyom kvura onin midivrehem. We'll say that's easy because at most the Yom HaKvura only has a din of aninus midirabanon. Ve'eno tofes leilo midivrehem. And we'll say that aninos certainly does not bring in the following night. Lefichach shochtin alav v'tova v'ochel le'erev af b'shar kodshim. Ultimately, again, I will say, therefore, again, he would be able to go to the mikvah, and that night, not only eat Korban Pesach, but I will say, also be able to eat other karbanos as well. We should be zocha that Amir Tashem in the schus of coming out on Amasei Tisha B'Av, learning Maseches Zevachim, learning about their karbanos, learning about the halachos of Korban Pesach, seeing the interface between the halachos of Avelos and the halachos of karbanos. What an incredible metaphor for us. We're coming off the heels of Hilchos Avelos. We're coming into Korban Pesach. So what does the Rambam Paskin? The Rambam Paskins, again, that as long as it's Avelos D'Rabbanan, then ultimately, again, you could have the Kachim at night. This year, Tisha B'Av, but Tisha B'Av is always the D'Rabbanan. This year, it was even a weaker D'Rabbanan, right? It was a Nidche fast. So we're coming in Eretz Hashem into the night of Masei Tisha B'Av to our Korban Pesach, to our Zevachim, to our Karbanos, ultimately, again, with even a weaker form of Avelos. And how we should be Zevachim, Eretz Hashem, to enter into our Beis HaMikdash, to eat our Zevachim and our Psachim, B'Shah Tova U'Metzlachos.